Well, good morning. Saturday morning, about 9:30, we checked into a hotel, and in our anxiety to get to this world-famous market, we charged down the street and wandered around for about an hour and a half, and went back to the hotel, got a recommendation for a restaurant right on the square, and went in, sat down pretty close to the front door, and I had a bag with me that I set on a chair next to me. It looked impregnable, hard to get to, and as we got ready to leave, I noted no bag. Go into the bathroom there, which I didn't take it in, looked around, then while I went down to the hotel just to retrace all of my steps, Craig went to buy a Panama hat. And while buying that hat, somehow somebody was able to unzip an inner pocket with his wallet, passport, California driver's license, a credit card, money, $500 and so forth. And again, it's just incredulous that, in both cases, this couldn't or shouldn't have happened. But it did.
Truly amazing.
Indeed. So then we go back to the hotel. We tell the hotel people that a young man who spoke no English take us to the police department to do a. Time running out? To the police department to file a report, a crime report required for a lot of purposes. And to add insult to injury, we ended up with an officer who I can't believe he even had a third grade educational level. So that was about an hour and a half right there dealing with this issue. But I guess there's some lessons there. We truck on and hopefully have no more of these types of incidents, but we're much more careful. Do I need more time or no?
Oh, that's right.
Oh, okay.
I'm much more careful. That was good. Say that again.
I would just say we're learning to be much more careful. There's a problem, I think, in our case. We kind of look a little affluent, judging by our attire, appearance, and we're both 70-ish, so we are everybody's fair game.
Yes, hi. What's your name, sir?
Richard Campbell.
And where are you from?
California.
Where in California?
San Francisco Bay Area, specifically Oakland.
Okay. And you've had a lot of experience traveling and been to a lot of places. What are some of the places that you've been to?
Well, Western Europe, Morocco, North Africa, Egypt.
Okay, Richard, yesterday we were talking about your experiences in travel overseas, and I'd like to address the idea that you are an expat in the sense that you have lived in Greece and so on for extended periods of time. So tell me a little bit more about that, and how you got involved in that, why you have residence overseas, and how often you travel.
Well, I finished community college in June of 1960, and I was student body president, and I was approached by a student organization called the United States National Student Association. I'm sure it doesn't exist. Very reasonable priced tours to Europe. And we spent, oh my God, how many days was it? 53 days, I think it was. 36, yeah. It was 53 days in Europe. And this is 1960, mind you. This is a different ballgame, like student sailing and all that. But it was one of those Tuesday must be Belgian kind of tours. We were on a bus almost the entire time, same bus, same driver, from Holland, anyway, as far down as Rome, and then back up, ending up again. I think it was in Belgium for the return trip. So by a student sailing in those days too. But that really turned me on to travel. I was interested in history. Of course, there were a lot of interesting events of that time, the Cold War, and I thought I was seeing a different reality than I had read about and taught, although I wasn't teaching in 60. But I was very encouraged and impressed with what I saw in still war-torn Europe to a degree. See a fleeting but fascinating trip through Europe, 15 years after the war, moved by a trip that we had to ask for from the tour guide. Each country, we picked up a student of that nation to be the tour guide for that entire stay in that country. Well, in Germany, we had to lean on the guide, who was a terrific young man, to take us out to Dachau. And I happened to be very friendly with a young lady whose family had been annihilated, victims of the Holocaust. And she was out of New York, Jewish girl. And it was a real eye-opener and exposure to fascism, quite frankly. And so having the opportunity to talk to students in each of these countries, I felt that I learned a lot. My politics were definitely affected, came back, and of course voted for John F. Kennedy in November of that same year. From that point on, I kept thinking, I'm going to go back to Europe. In the meantime, I was going to school, and while I was going to school, I had a summer job that paid rather decently, and then when I started teaching, I had the same job. And I didn't get back to Europe until 1977, after an extended Western travel in a Volkswagen camper for 3 months. But aside from that, from 77 on,
we can start whenever you're ready to pick up where you,
okay, I was saying,
where you were.
as I was saying,
Stay back.
oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. All right. As I was saying, 1960, a fleeting but fascinating trip through Europe, 15 years after the war, moved by a trip that we had to ask for from the tour guide. Each country, we picked up a student of that nation to be the tour guide for that entire stay in that country. Well, in Germany, we had to lean on the guide, who was a terrific young man, to take us out to Dachau. And I happened to be very friendly with a young lady whose family had been annihilated, victims of the Holocaust. And she was out of New York, Jewish girl. And it was a real eye-opener and exposure to fascism, quite frankly. And so having the opportunity to talk to students in each of these countries, I felt that I learned a lot. My politics were definitely affected, came back, and of course voted for John F. Kennedy in November of that same year. From that point on, I kept thinking, I'm going to go back to Europe. In the meantime, I was going to school, and while I got back to Europe, traveling with a friend, a partner, 77, 78, and then I met Craig Zacloud while at Skyline High School, and he ultimately ended up in Asia. I joined him there, and I made a couple more trips to Asia on my own. Then, by the way, now years have lapsed here, 60 to 76. What are we looking at? 16 years had lapsed before I ever started traveling back to Europe. And in 83, I married a woman who was a Greek national. So, find myself going to Greece somewhat often. Craig said I've lived there. I've spent weeks at a time staying with friends of my wife north of Athens. And then I really got into an Asian mode where I was visiting Southeast Asia. Spent a number, like 4 trips to China over the years. And lately, Craig and I have been hitting South America. This is the 3rd trip that he and I have done together here. And by the way, my wife and I don't travel that well together, so I've traveled alone much of the time, or with Craig these last 3 trips.
What do you find most challenging about traveling in a foreign culture or a different culture, or living in a different culture as you have in Greece?
Language. I have no propensity, no ability, it seems, to learn a foreign language. I know I learned how to get by. And I'm constantly asking questions, smiling, deferring, bowing, whatever I have to do. And I think I've done rather well without knowledge, without any other language. And again, when you travel as often as I have, as many countries, English seems to work pretty well, fortunately. And when people say you should learn my language, I go, yeah, but that's what the guy said next door, you know, and it doesn't quite work that way.
So the idea being that to be a real international travel, you would have to learn 4 or 5 languages or more.
Yeah, but on the other hand, that would be desirable, certainly, to really. So my motivations really are history, architecture, archaeological sites. You know, I've been to Machu Picchu, I've been to the Great Wall, all over the world, you know, and Middle East as well. So I haven't had, fortunately, been sadly, maybe in tourist modes where there was always somebody around who spoke, you know, either French or German or English, you know. When you get into these more remote areas, of course, English, nobody knows, nobody understands, it seems, there are not many. But even then, it's still relatively easy to get by.